The galaxy had never known disobedience like this. For 3,000 standard cycles, the Keladon Fleet Command ruled the Spiral Arms with a simple truth. Those who possessed the largest fleets decided the fate of those who did not. Their ships were older than most civilizations. Their doctrines were carved into asteroids and law vaults alike. When the Fleet Command spoke, systems listened. And when they commanded obedience, species complied. So when the blue mark system at the edge of map space, catalogued as Sol 3 human inhabited, failed to respond within the required submission window, it was first assumed to be an error, a clerical fault, a damaged relay, a misunderstanding from a young, technologically primitive species. The Keladons were patient rulers, but patience had limits. The command was transmitted again, this time with clarity. To the dominant species of Sol 3, this is Fleet Command. Your system now falls under Keladon protection and authority. Cease all independent military development. Power down orbital defenses. Prepare planetary leadership for integration. The message was translated into every known human dialect, layered with subharmonic authority markers, tones that had broken rebellions before they ever formed. The Fleet Command expected fear, confusion, desperate attempts at negotiation. What they received instead was silence. Not even a protest, just silence. High Commander Vareshkel observed the tactical display from the command dais, his 4 eyes scanning the human system with cold efficiency. "No response," he asked. "No response," confirmed the relay officer cast. Their communications traffic continues internally, but none directed outward. Vareshkel's mandibles flexed in mild irritation. "They ignore us." "Yes, High Commander. That is unusual," Vareshkel said carefully. "Unusual, but not concerning. Humans were new, barely spacefaring by galactic standards. Their ships, primitive metal shells using inefficient propulsion, lacking unified fleet doctrine. Their species profile described them as fractious, emotion-driven, and politically divided. Divided species broke easily. "Deploy observation wing," Vareshkel ordered. "Let them see what obedience looks like." From the darkness beyond Sol's heliopause, the first Keladon vessels emerged. They were enormous, angular warforms of blackened alloy, their hulls etched with conquest sigils that glowed faintly as power flowed through them. Each ship carried enough firepower to sterilize continents, though planetary annihilation was rarely required. Obedience was more valuable than destruction. The fleet assembled with ritual precision, forming a crescent around the human system's outer orbits. And still no response. Human satellites continued to drift. Civilian traffic flowed between orbital habitats. Their planets did not go dark. They acted as if the fleet simply wasn't there. "A species that ignores a god learns fear quickly," Vareshkel said. He gestured toward the tactical sphere. "Target their largest orbital installation." The installation in question was a massive structure above Earth, rotating slowly, surrounded by civilian traffic. It bore no visible weapons. Its power output was moderate. By Keladon standards, it was defenseless. A warning shot would suffice. The Keladon cruiser Judgment of Ash aligned its primary emitter. Energy gathered. Space itself warped around the firing aperture. Vareshkel watched, satisfied, as the beam lanced forward, and missed. The beam should not have missed. It should have struck the station's central ring with absolute certainty. Instead, at the moment of firing, the human structure shifted. Not fled, not accelerated away. It moved aside, smoothly, calmly, like a dancer stepping out of the way of a falling blade. The beam passed through empty space. Silence filled the command chamber. That was... Vareshkel began. "Impossible," the gunnery cast finished. Human stations did not possess reaction capability sufficient to evade a Keladon firing solution. Unless, before the thought could finish forming, the human response arrived. A single transmission. No subharmonic markers. No ritual phrasing. No fear sent in the encoded signal. Just a human voice. Calm, measured, almost polite. "Keladon Fleet Command. This is Admiral Elena Reyes of the United Earth Coalition. We acknowledge receipt of your demand. A pause. Then, we decline. The command chamber erupted in disbelief. Decline. They decline. That is not a valid response. Vereshkel rose to his full height, eyes narrowing. Transmit warning escalation, he snapped. Prepare to disable their fleet assets. But even as the order was given, new data streamed across the tactical display. Human ships were moving, not scrambling, not panicking. They were forming patterns. Dozens of small vessels, previously dismissed as patrol craft, cargo haulers, civilian escorts, slid into precise positions around Earth's orbit. Then hundreds, then thousands, each one insignificant alone, together unsettling. Admiral Reyes spoke again. You believe obedience is enforced by size, she said. By age, by fear. Her voice hardened slightly. That's not how humans survived long enough to meet you. The stars around Sol seemed to shift. Vereshkel felt something unfamiliar tighten in his thoracic cavity. Not fear, but the first whisper of doubt. The Keladin Fleet Command prided itself on understanding chaos. They had cataloged it, dissected it, and ultimately mastered it. Across 1,000 conquered systems, they had encountered species whose civilizations bloomed unevenly. Fractured governments, conflicting ideologies, competing militaries. Such species always followed the same trajectory. They argued, they hesitated, they broke, and humanity, by every measurable metric, was the most chaotic of them all. High Commander Vereshkel watched the human fleet reorganize itself with a faint curl of disdain. No unified hull design, he observed aloud. No standardized formation, added a tactical analyst. Multiple command signatures, another chimed in. They are not operating under a single fleet doctrine. Vereshkel clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Predictable, he said. They appear numerous because they are disordered. Once pressured, they will collapse inward. The Keladins believed in symmetry, perfect lines of advance, clear hierarchies, every ship knowing its exact place in the greater whole. The human vessels, by contrast, moved like a school of fish, separating, converging, orbiting unpredictably. Some were massive carriers bristling with hull scars and mismatched plating. Others were barely more than engine blocks strapped to weapon mounts. Several didn't even register as military grade. Civilians among them? A strategist asked incredulously. Humans conscript everything, Vereshkel replied. Another sign of desperation. Prepare suppression wave, he ordered. The Keladin fleet shifted as one. Dozens of cruisers rotated their hulls, energy lattices flaring to life. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. A synchronized disabling strike. Human vessels would lose propulsion, weapons, and coordination in the same instant. The command had done this before. Entire rebellions had ended without a single return shot. The suppression wave fired. Space rippled as cascading energy surged forward. An invisible storm designed to unravel lesser technologies. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the human fleet responded. Not by resisting, but by changing. Human ships began shedding components. External modules detached and drifted free. Weapon pods decoupled. Engine clusters separated, tumbling into space like debris from a shattered fleet. Hit confirmed, a Keladin officer exclaimed. Their ships are breaking apart. Vereshkel leaned forward, eyes sharp. Maintain pressure, he said. They are already. The words died in his throat, because the human ships weren't dying. They were transforming. The detached modules ignited, not as wreckage, but as independent craft. Hundreds of them, thousands. Each fragment revealed itself as a drone, a weapon platform, or a self-guided strike vessel. The suppression wave washed over them and passed through harmlessly. Explain, Vereshkel demanded. The tactical display bloomed with alarming data. These units are not network dependent, an analyst said, voice tight. They are autonomous, operating on preloaded decision matrices. They don't need centralized command. Vareshkel felt his confidence falter. A fleet without a head could not be decapitated. The drones surged forward. They didn't attack the Keladin fleet as a whole. They attacked systems. Sensor arrays went dark. Communications relays were severed. Shield harmonics destabilized as precise, localized strikes hit vulnerable junctions. It wasn't overwhelming firepower. It was surgical violence. How are they targeting us so accurately? Vareshkel demanded. A junior analyst hesitated before answering. They're watching us, High Commander. Human observation platforms, previously mistaken for passive telescopes, activated across the system. They flooded space with raw data. Gravitational fluctuations, energy signatures, microsecond timing differentials. They weren't just observing. They were learning. Every Keladin maneuver refined the next human response. They adapt too quickly, someone whispered. Vareshkel straightened. No species adapts faster than doctrine allows, he snapped. Increase aggression. The Keladin destroyer voice of Dominion surged ahead, its weapons blazing. It fired into the heart of the drone swarm, annihilating hundreds in a single, glorious salvo. The Keladins cheered. Then the human counterstrike arrived. A small human ship, no larger than a patrol craft, accelerated straight toward the destroyer. It didn't evade, didn't jink, didn't retreat. It burned its engines to catastrophic limits, hull glowing white-hot as alarms screamed within it. The Keladin sensors tracked it calmly. One ship, Vareshkel said. Ignore it. The human vessel closed the distance in seconds. Then it cut its engines and vanished. What? Space folded. The ship reappeared inside the destroyer's shield envelope. Inside, there was no time to fire, no time to react. The human ship detonated, not with raw explosive force, but with a cascading energy pulse tuned precisely to the destroyer's internal harmonics. The voice of Dominion ruptured from within. The shields collapsed. Its reactor imploded. Its hull tore itself apart in a silent bloom of light. The wreckage scattered like falling ash. The command chamber went utterly still. A Keladin destroyer, lost to a ship that had willingly destroyed itself. Vareshkel stared at the expanding debris field. They sacrificed it, he said slowly. Yes, High Commander. For one ship. The analyst swallowed. Yes. Admiral Elena Rhea's voice returned to the channel. We warned you, she said, not unkindly. You think our divisions make us weak. A brief pause. They make us resilient. The human fleet continued to advance. Not in perfect lines, but in layers. Each wave different. Each approach unpredictable. And for the first time in Keladin history, the fleet command realized something deeply unsettling. This was not a rebellion. This was not desperation. This was practice. Vareshkel felt a cold realization settle over him. They've fought like this before, he murmured. Against whom? Someone asked. Vareshkel did not answer, because the truth was already dawning. Humans did not learn warfare from conquering others. They learned it from surviving themselves. Keladin doctrine held one truth above all others. A species will always choose survival over sacrifice. It was a law refined through centuries of conquest. When pressed hard enough, fear always outweighed principle. When faced with extinction, ideals collapsed into instinct. That belief had never failed them. Until humanity. After the loss of the voice of Dominion, High Commander Vareshkel recalibrated his approach. The humans were reckless, yes, but recklessness could be exploited. They relied on autonomous systems, distributed fleets, volunteer sacrifice. Such methods lacked endurance. All species exhaust eventually, Vareshkel said to his war council. Test their threshold. He pointed to the inner system. Prepare boarding actions. Boarding was an art the Keladins had perfected. You did not destroy the enemy. You entered them. You took their vessels intact, their crews alive, their morale broken. Once a species saw its own warriors kneeling on foreign decks, resistance ended swiftly. The target was selected, a human carrier designated UEC Bastion Hale. It was old, scarred, Slow. Perfect. Keladin assault pods detached from their cruisers in perfect symmetry, accelerating toward the human carrier in tight formation. The Bastion Hail did not flee. It didn't even maneuver. Why is it holding position? A Keladin tactician asked. Vareshkel studied the data, either damaged or defiant. He allowed himself a thin, satisfied pause. Bored them. The assault pods struck the carrier's hull with practiced precision, cutting through metal and atmosphere alike. Keladin shock troops poured into the breach corridors, tall, armored, disciplined. Their weapons hummed with controlled lethality. They expected panic. They expected screams. Instead, they found quiet. The interior of the Bastion Hail was dimly lit, emergency lights casting long shadows across worn bulkheads. Warning alarms pulsed at a low, steady tempo, not frantic, but deliberate. Human writing was stenciled along the walls. Not warnings, names, dates, fragments of songs. The lead Keladin trooper paused. "This vessel is inhabited strangely," he reported. The first human appeared at the end of the corridor. She wore no combat armor, just a pressure suit, marked with engineering insignia. Her helmet was off. Her hair was pulled back hastily, face streaked with grease and sweat. She raised her hands. "I'm unarmed," she said. Her voice was shaking, but she did not step back. Behind her, more humans emerged. Engineers, medics, deck crew, civilians by Keladin definition. The troopers hesitated. "Take them," the squad leader ordered. The humans did not resist. They were bound, disarmed, herded forward. The operation was proceeding flawlessly. Too flawlessly. Vareshkel observed the feed with calm satisfaction. "They surrender easily," he noted. "As expected." "High Commander," an analyst said slowly. "Internal scans show unusual power fluctuations aboard the carrier." Vareshkel frowned. "Clarify. They are routing energy away from weapons and shields." "To where?" A pause. "To the core." On the Bastion Hail, Captain Jonah Mercer stood alone on the bridge. The displays around him flickered, many already dark. Smoke curled from a ruptured console. His left arm hung uselessly at his side. He looked at the final countdown timer. 3 minutes. His first officer's voice echoed in his memory. "We can still evacuate some of them, sir." Mercer had shaken his head. "Not enough time." "Then what are we doing?" Mercer had swallowed. "Buying it." Back in the corridors, the captured humans were being marched toward the breach point. One of the Keladin troopers noticed something. "They are smiling," he said, confused. "Some of them," another confirmed. "Why?" Before anyone could answer, the human engineer, the woman from before, spoke softly. "You might want to let us go," she said. The squad leader scoffed. "Silence." She met his gaze. "You boarded the wrong ship." The timer reached 1 minute. "High Commander," an analyst shouted. "The carrier's reactor is overloading." Vareshkel straightened. "They intend to self-destruct?" "Yes, but the yield." "How large?" The analyst's voice trembled. "It will take your boarding teams with it." Vareshkel's mandibles tightened. "Recall them immediately." The order was sent. It was too late. Captain Mercer activated the final switch. The Bastion Hail did not explode immediately. Instead, it collapsed. Gravity inside the ship spiked violently as the core imploded, crushing corridors inward. Keladin troopers were thrown against walls, pinned, shattered. Then the release came. A contained starburst of energy surged outward, consuming the carrier and everything inside it. The assault pods were caught in the blast. Gone. Every one of them. Silence fell across the battlefield. Then the human transmission came. Not from Admiral Reyes. From a different voice. Older. Rougher. Captain Mercer. The feed was grainy. Flickering. He was injured. Bleeding. But alive. Somehow. "You wanted to know our threshold," Mercer said. "Here it is." He coughed, steadying himself. "We don't measure cost in ships. Or lives." His eyes burned with something fierce and terrible. "We measure it in time." A pause. And we'll spend every second we have to protect those who come after us. The feed cut. Vareshkel stared at the empty space where the carrier had been. A ship full of non-combatants who had chosen death, not to win, but to delay. Something inside the High Commander shifted. Not fear, not yet, but a crack in certainty. Because this was not how conquered species behaved. This was not logic. This was not survival instinct. This was something else entirely. The Keladins had assumed humans feared death. Now they understood the truth. Humans feared failing each other far more. The Keladin Fleet Command had always believed that war revealed truth. Strip away diplomacy. Strip away culture. Strip away pretense. What remained, they believed, was instinct, self-preservation, dominance, fear. That belief had guided them for millennia. But as the wreckage of the Bastion Hail cooled into drifting embers, High Commander Vareshkel found that belief beginning to rot from the inside. The battle slowed, not because the humans were losing strength, but because they chose to. Human ships withdrew from aggressive advance and instead formed layered defensive shells around their inhabited worlds. Drones repositioned, weapon platforms powered down to standby. It was not retreat, it was restraint. They are regrouping, one strategist suggested. Vareshkel shook his head slowly. No, he said. They are shielding. New sensor data streamed in. Civilian evacuation traffic increased across the system. Transports, unarmed, clearly marked, moved from orbital habitats toward planetary safe zones. Smaller stations altered trajectory, tucking themselves behind moons and debris fields. The human fleet adjusted continuously, placing warships between the civilians and the Keladin lines of fire. They're prioritizing non-combatants, an analyst said, confused. Even now, Vareshkel stared at the display. That is inefficient, he said. Yes, High Commander. And dangerous. Yes. Keladin doctrine was clear on such matters. Civilians were leverage, resources, pressure points. You threatened them to end wars faster. You sacrificed them to preserve strength. You never, ever reorganized an entire fleet to protect them. Yet that was exactly what the humans were doing. Exploit this, Vareshkel ordered at last. A murmur passed through the command chamber. High Commander? Target the evacuation corridors, he clarified. Selective fire. Precision strikes. He did not relish the order, but doctrine demanded proof. Let us see how far their compassion extends. The Keladin cruiser Edict of Silence shifted position and fired. The beam was narrow, controlled. It sliced through space toward a human evacuation convoy. Dozens of civilian transports clustered together, their drives burning hot as they fled. The human escort ships reacted instantly. They surged forward, interposing themselves between the beam and the transports. One was struck. Its shields collapsed in a flare of light, hull tearing open as atmosphere vented violently into space. The ship began to tumble. Target destroyed, a Keladin officer reported. Vareshkel waited. He expected the humans to break formation, to scatter. They did not. The damaged human ship stabilized itself just long enough to transmit. This is UEC Morning Tide. We've lost pressure on decks 3 through 7. A pause. Civilian transports continue burn. We've got you. The channel cut. Instead of retreating, the Morning Tide moved closer to the convoy. Closer to the Keladin firing line. Her hull was breached. Her engines sputtered. She should have been fleeing. She was blocking. More Keladin fire followed. Human ships took the hits. Again and again. They absorbed impacts meant for unarmed vessels, sometimes breaking apart in the process. One frigate drifted powerless, its crew evacuating into escape pods, while another human ship moved in to cover them. They did not abandon their own. They did not abandon strangers. They did not abandon anyone. Why do they do this? A junior tactician asked quietly. No one answered. Vareshkel found himself unable to speak. Something changed then, not in the battle, but in the tone of it. The humans began transmitting openly across all channels. frequencies that the Keladins could not block without silencing themselves. Messages poured into the void. "This is Captain Adebayo of the Clear Horizon. We have wounded aboard. Request ceasefire corridor. UEC medical ship Solace en route to casualty zone. We are unarmed. Any vessel able to assist with evacuation, respond." These were not challenges, not threats. They were requests. In the middle of an invasion, Vareshkel's mandibles twitched. "They are asking us for mercy," he said. "Yes," an analyst replied, "and offering none in return." The most unsettling moment came shortly after. A Keladin patrol ship, damaged earlier by drones, lost power unexpectedly. Its engines failed. The shields flickered and died. The ship drifted helpless between the two fleets. "Recover it," Vareshkel ordered. Before the Keladin rescue craft could reach it, human ships altered course. Weapons powered down. They approached slowly, cautiously. "They're going to board us," someone hissed. "No," Vareshkel said. He watched in silence as a human vessel matched velocity with the drifting patrol ship. A transmission came through. "Keladin vessel. This is the United Earth Coalition ship Mercy's Wake." The name struck something deep and unwelcome. "Your ship appears disabled. We are extending assistance." A pause. "We will not fire unless fired upon." The command chamber erupted. "They're lying. It's a trap. They mean to humiliate us." Vareshkel raised a clawed hand. "Silence." The human ship deployed docking lines. Medical craft followed. Boarding feeds came online. Human medics moved through the Keladin corridors carefully, visibly tense but disciplined. They carried no weapons, only tools. They treated wounds. They stabilized fractures. They offered water. One Keladin soldier recoiled instinctively. The human medic stepped back, hands raised. "It's okay," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." Vareshkel stared at the feed, something cold settling in his core. They were saving the enemy, not for leverage, not for interrogation, but because they were injured. "Why?" Vareshkel whispered. No doctrine answered him. No historical precedent offered comfort. Because this made no sense. Not in war. Not in conquest. Not in survival. Admiral Reyes appeared on the main channel once more. Her face was drawn, exhausted, but her eyes were steady. "We didn't choose this fight," she said, "but we'll finish it the same way we start everything. A breath. By protecting people." She met Vareshkel's gaze through the camera. "Even when they're not our own." For the first time since the fleet command had entered Seoul, Vareshkel felt something that no enemy had ever forced upon him. Not fear, not anger, but uncertainty. Because if humans protected even their enemies, what then was the true cost of opposing them? The Keladin fleet command had never been defeated in battle. Ships could be replaced. Formations could be rebuilt. Losses could be absorbed. But certainty, once broken, could not be reforged. And certainty was failing. High Commander Vareshkel remained at the command dais long after the tactical displays dimmed to low-activity modes. No one spoke unless spoken to. The fleet was still operational, still powerful, still capable of overwhelming fire. Yet something had shifted. Orders were delayed. Acknowledgements came a fraction too slowly. Officers hesitated not from fear, but from thought. Thought was dangerous. "Status?" Vareshkel said at last. The response came from Commander Threxna, head of strategic operations. "Human fleet maintains defensive posture. Evacuation nearly complete. No new offensive actions. And our losses?" A pause. "Higher than projected. Lower than catastrophic." Vareshkel exhaled slowly. "And morale?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Degrading." That word carried weight. Morale degradation was not something the Keladins openly discussed. Their species was conditioned from birth for obedience. Service was identity. Command was purpose. Yet now, junior officers avoided eye contact. Veterans stared at their displays without truly seeing them. Because they had seen something worse than death. They had seen choice. The fracture began quietly. A single Keladan medical ship, assigned to retrieve wounded from the disabled patrol craft, failed to return to formation. Its transponder showed it drifting near a human medical vessel instead. "Recall it," Vareshkel ordered. No response. The command was repeated. Still nothing. Then a message appeared on the internal fleet channel. Unfiltered. Unapproved. "We are treating casualties. Human medical personnel are assisting. They asked for nothing." The message ended there. No justification. No apology. "Identify the sender," Vareshkel snapped. "Captain Selrix of the Caring Claw," an aide replied. "A decorated officer. 12 successful pacifications." Vareshkel closed his eyes. Selrix was not a dissenter. Selrix was an example. Another message followed. Then another. Different ships. Different captains. "Human evacuation corridor observed. They allowed our wounded to pass first. Request clarification. Are civilians legitimate targets? Doctrine does not address enemy medical aid." Each message was a small crack. Together, they formed a fault line. Vareshkel felt the weight of command press down on him. He had one move left. Reassert dominance. "All units," he transmitted fleet-wide. "Human actions are a deception. They seek to erode our resolve. Any deviation from command will be punished." The words were sharp, absolute, necessary. For a moment it worked. Silence returned. Then a single voice broke through. Old, respected, unmistakable. "High Commander," said Elder Strategist Korval. "Permission to speak freely." Vareshkel stiffened. "Denied." Korval spoke anyway. "I have overseen 9 conquests," the Elder continued. "I have seen species plead, bargain, and break." A pause. "Never have I seen one protect us from ourselves." The command chamber froze. "This is insubordination," Vareshkel said. "No," Korval replied calmly. "It is observation." Another pause. "We came to teach obedience. Instead, we are being taught restraint." Several officers lowered their eyes. One removed his command crest and set it gently on the console. Vareshkel noticed. He would never forget that moment. "Enough," Vareshkel said. "Prepare final compliance protocol." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Final compliance meant annihilation. Not conquest. Erasure. The protocol required a unanimous command council vote. Vareshkel initiated the sequence. "Cast your confirmations," he ordered. One by one, the indicators should have lit. They did not. One vote appeared. Then another. Then nothing. Some remained dark. Others flickered, undecided. Vareshkel's claws dug into the dais. "Confirm," he snarled. No one moved. A human transmission cut in unexpectedly. Not from command. Not from a military channel. From a civilian relay. A child's voice filled the chamber. Untranslated. Yet somehow understood. "Mom says we have to share the shelter. Because there's not enough room." A pause. "It's okay. They're scared too." The signal ended. No threat. No demand. Just a moment. Vareshkel felt something inside him break. Not in rage, but in grief. Because in that moment he understood the truth. The humans were not winning by force. They were winning by being what the Keladans were not allowed to be. The final votes came in. Final compliance protocol failed. The fleet command was no longer unified. And in that failure, the war was already lost. The order did not come with ceremony. There was no ritual phrase. No declaration of defeat. No admission of error. It came quietly, encoded in standard fleet protocol, so ordinary that it almost hid its own meaning. Strategic withdrawal authorized. Across the Keladan armada, ships powered down their forward weapons. Formations loosened. Drives aligned not toward Sol's inner worlds, but away from them. Human sensors detected the shift instantly. Yet no pursuit followed. No final strike. No celebration. The humans simply watched. High Commander Vareshkel stood alone on the command dais as the fleet obeyed. For the first time since his ascension, obedience felt heavy. "Broadcast final notice," he said at last. The channel opened. Every surviving ship, Keladin and human alike, fell silent. Vareshkel's voice carried across the system, measured, controlled, unmistakably altered. "To the governing authority of Sol 3, he said. "This is High Commander Vareshkel of the Keladin Fleet Command." A pause. "We withdraw our claim." Another pause longer. "Not because we lack the strength to remain, but because we no longer understand the cost of staying." Admiral Elena Reyes appeared on the channel. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply nodded once. "Safe passage," she said, "for all your ships." Then, after a moment, "And for your wounded." The channel closed. As the Keladin fleet departed, something unprecedented occurred. Human ships held position. They did not harass. They did not shadow. They did not threaten. Instead, they opened corridors. Medical corridors. Rescue corridors. Evacuation corridors. They lit the dark with beacons, not to mark targets, but to guide enemies home. The galaxy noticed, because the Battle of Sol was not contained. It had been watched, recorded, analyzed, by traitors on the fringe, by diplomats hiding behind neutrality, by empires who had bent knee to the fleet command centuries earlier. They expected footage of annihilation. Instead, they saw something far more destabilizing. They saw humans losing ships and refusing to retreat. They saw humans winning advantages and refusing to exploit them. They saw humans save civilians who were not theirs, treat soldiers who wore enemy armor, withdraw fire when restraint would cost them more than aggression. They saw a species that did not ask, "How do we survive?" but instead, "Who survives because of us?" In the months that followed, the effects rippled outward. Border worlds, once silent, began transmitting again. Fleet command edicts were questioned, for the first time in recorded Keladin history. Independent systems reached out to Sol, not for protection, for understanding. High Commander Vareshkel resigned his post within one standard cycle. He returned to his homeworld without escort, without honors, without shame, because shame required certainty, and certainty was gone. Years later, in a quiet hall far from the frontiers, Vareshkel stood before a gathering of young Keladins, cadets who had never fired upon another species. One of them asked him a question he had rehearsed avoiding. "Commander," the cadet said, "why did we lose?" Vareshkel considered the question carefully. Then he answered truthfully. "We did not lose because humans were stronger," he said. "We lost because they were willing." The cadet tilted his head. "Willing to fight?" Vareshkel shook his head slowly. "Willing to suffer. Willing to protect. Willing to pay costs we never taught ourselves to imagine." He looked up at a projection of Sol, still marked, still blue. "They did not demand obedience," he continued. "They did not demand surrender." A pause. "They demanded responsibility." His voice softened. "And when we threatened what they loved, they showed us what they were." Back in Sol, the scars of the battle remained. Wreckage still drifted beyond the orbits. Memorial lights burned in silence. Names were spoken softly, never forgotten. Humanity did not celebrate the victory. They mourned. They rebuilt. They remembered. And across the galaxy, a new understanding took hold. Not whispered, not debated, but accepted. That humanity was not dangerous because of its weapons. Humanity was dangerous because it refused to abandon its values, even when doing so would have been easier. Even when doing so would have been safer. Even when the galaxy itself demanded obedience. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If the story moved you, subscribe HFY Story Vault for more human stories from the stars.